Have you ever boarded a plane and as you drag your carry-on through the narrow aisle toward the back, notice how things gradually shift? The air starts to feel warmer. People are a little more crammed together. The noise level goes up. You finally reach row 27, squeeze into your seat and wonder, why does this feel so much more stressful than when I sat closer to the front? It's not in your head. The truth is that the seat you choose, or get assigned, has a massive impact on your entire flight experience, and nowhere is that more obvious than in the contrast between row 7 and row 27. Let's start with boarding. The very first moment your flight experience begins. If you're seated in row 7, chances are you're one of the first passengers to board. On most airlines, boarding proceeds from front to back, unless you're in a premium group or a special boarding zone. When you're in row 7, you're comfortably ahead of the crowd. You walk onto the plane, find your seat almost immediately, and stow your bag in an overhead bin that's still completely empty. There's no rush, no pressure. You sit down with time to spare and watch as the rest of the plane slowly fills in. But if you're in row 27, your story is very different. You'll likely be in the last group to board. You step onto a crowded plane, navigate through a long aisle of already seated passengers, and hunt for overhead bin space that might already be gone. Sometimes, even though you're seated toward the back, someone in row 12 has taken your bin space, leaving you no choice but to shove your bag far behind you, which causes more hassle later when it's time to deplane. All this creates an atmosphere of chaos. It's frustrating, it's uncomfortable, and it starts your flight off on the wrong foot before you've even sat down. Now let's talk about space and traffic, something most people underestimate. Row 7, being near the front, is relatively peaceful. You're ahead of the galleys and lavatories, which means fewer people walking by your seat. There's less foot traffic, fewer interruptions, and more opportunity to relax, watch a movie, or even nap. But row 27, that's the high traffic zone. You're seated near the bathrooms and/or galley, meaning there's a constant stream of people walking past you, standing next to you, leaning over your seat, and occasionally bumping into your elbow or tray. You're also more likely to hear every bathroom flush, door slam, and awkward conversation near the galley. If you're sensitive to noise or smell, being in the rear of the plane can genuinely degrade your experience. The lavatory doors near row 27 are constantly opening and closing, and the scent of strong disinfectant, or worse, can linger around your seat. In contrast, row 7 passengers rarely even notice these things. They're comfortably removed from the sensory overload of the back. Next, let's explore a key area that many travelers overlook: in-flight service order. On nearly every airline, flight attendants start serving food and drinks from the front and work their way backward. If you're in row 7, you're first in line. Your choice of meals is still available, your drink request is fulfilled without issue, and you're served quickly. But by the time the cart reaches row 27, that chicken option you wanted? Gone. The specific drink you asked for? Sorry, we ran out. You're also waiting longer to get served, and even longer to have your tray collected. That means you could be sitting with your garbage, your empty tray table, and sticky fingers for 30 minutes longer than someone in the front. There's also something we don't talk about enough: the experience of turbulence. While turbulence affects the entire aircraft, its impact is most noticeable at the back. Row 7 is typically located near or just ahead of the aircraft's center of gravity, which is right around the wing area. This part of the plane experiences the least motion. It's more balanced, more stable. Row 27, however, is near the tail, and when turbulence hits, the tail end of the aircraft reacts like a whip. The bumps are more intense, the shaking more violent, and passengers sitting in the rear are far more likely to feel sick or anxious. Even if you're not prone to motion sickness, the physical experience is objectively rougher. Let's fast forward to the end of the flight. You've landed, the seatbelt sign turns off, and everyone jumps up, eager to deplane. If you're in row 7, you're among the first to get up and leave. Within minutes, you've grabbed your bag, stepped off the plane, and you're on your way to your next destination. But in row 27, you're not going anywhere. You wait and wait. You watch as 150 passengers ahead of you slowly pull bags from overhead bins, adjust jackets, say goodbye to seatmates, and clog the aisle. Deplaning from the rear can take up to 15-20 minutes longer. It's especially stressful if you've got a tight connection, a work meeting, or just a general desire to escape the cramped metal tube you've been stuck in for hours. The psychological toll also can't be ignored. Being at the front of the plane feels different. You're closer to the pilots. You're more connected to the flow of the flight. You hear announcements more clearly. You can see the cabin crew moving with purpose. You feel like part of the journey, but at the back, there's a strange sense of disconnect, like you're just being dragged along. That separation can amplify stress, fatigue, and frustration. It's subtle, but powerful. By now, it's clear that where you sit, whether it's row 7 or row 27, can completely reshape your in-flight experience. But it goes beyond just comfort or convenience. Your seat's location can influence everything from how quickly you deplane to how safe you feel, how tired you are at landing, and even your mental perception of the journey itself. Still, one big question remains. If the front is so much better, why is everyone not sitting there? The answer comes down to cost, habits, and a few lingering myths. Let's talk about cost first. On many airlines, especially low-cost carriers and those using an a la carte pricing model, forward seats, especially those in rows 5 to 10, are considered preferred and come with an added fee. It could be a small fee on a budget airline like Ryanair or Frontier, or a hefty surcharge on long-haul flights with carriers like British Airways or Lufthansa. That's because airlines know something many passengers overlook. People value time, convenience, and quiet more than they realize, especially once they've experienced the difference. Business travelers, frequent flyers, and even families willing to spend a bit more will often pay to secure those forward rows, even if the legroom is identical to row 27. In fact, seat location has quietly become one of the most profitable aspects of airline pricing strategies. But here's the irony. The back of the plane is often underrated. In fact, some experienced flyers actually prefer it. Why? On flights that board from both the front and the rear, which does happen, especially with smaller planes or remote boarding, sitting in the back could mean you board faster. Also, if you're flying on a half-empty route, the chances of an empty seat next to you are statistically higher toward the rear. Flight attendants sometimes stash snacks and drinks in the back galley, and being near them can make it easier to grab an extra cup of water or snack during a lull in service. Some even argue that the back of the plane is safer during certain crash scenarios. Which brings us to one of the most controversial and fascinating discussions in aviation: seat location and safety. You've probably heard someone say, the back of the plane is safest in a crash, or try to sit near the wings if you're worried about turbulence. Let's unpack that. The truth is, air travel is incredibly safe. Safer than driving, safer than crossing the street in some cities. But in the rare event of an accident or emergency landing, studies have shown that passengers seated in the rear third of the aircraft were slightly more likely to survive, especially in partial impact scenarios. A famous analysis by Popular Mechanics in 2007 reviewed crash data and concluded that survival rates were higher in the back rows. However, this varies drastically depending on the type of accident, and should never be the sole reason for choosing a seat. Safety is more nuanced than just front or back. Seats closer to emergency exits, particularly overwing exits, offer faster evacuation potential. Airlines often place able-bodied passengers here because exit row seats come with responsibility. These rows also come with more legroom but usually no underseat storage. If quick evacuation is a concern, the key is proximity to an exit, not necessarily your row number. Now let's address one of the biggest myths in air travel, that all economy seats are basically the same. This couldn't be further from the truth. Even within economy class, the passenger experience varies dramatically depending on your aircraft model, seat pitch, width, recline angle, and row location. For instance, some Boeing 777s have 3 to 4-3 seating with extremely narrow seats, while others maintain a more generous 3-3-3 layout. On many narrow-body aircraft like the A320 or Boeing 737, Exit row seats or bulkhead seats near the front provide far more comfort than standard rows at the back, despite being technically in the same class. Smart travelers have learned to use tools like Seat Guru or airline-specific seat maps to research specific aircraft layouts. Some will even study flight reviews, check forums, or watch YouTube seat tours before selecting. They know to avoid seats with misaligned windows, reduced recline due to bulkhead walls, or fixed armrests that make napping impossible. It's a subtle game of strategy, and row 7 is often the sweet spot. Not so close to first class that you pay premium pricing, but far enough ahead to enjoy quicker boarding, faster service, and a smoother ride. And let's not forget the human factor. Your mood, energy level, and stress tolerance can all be influenced by the environment around you. If you're seated near the galley in row 27, you might be woken up by clinking trays, loud conversations, or garbage collection. You might struggle to get the attention of a flight attendant when you need something, simply because they're focused up front. But in row 7, you have a better shot at making requests, getting early service, or just being acknowledged more quickly, especially on flights with reduced staffing or high passenger loads. So what should you do the next time you book a flight? It's simple. Choose your row with intention. Don't let the airline assign you a seat by default, unless you're trying to save every possible penny. Look at the seat map during booking. Check the airline's website for any layout differences, especially if it's a new or retrofitted aircraft. Use tools like Expert Flyer or Seat Guru to get extra insights. If you can, book early. Many of the best seats are snapped up weeks in advance, especially by elite members or savvy travelers. If you value speed, comfort, and less stress, aim for rows 5 through 10, just behind business class or premium economy. If you want legroom without paying for premium, try an exit row, but read the fine print, as some don't recline. If you're on a red eye and want peace, avoid seats near the bathrooms or galleys. And if you're prone to anxiety or air sickness, sit near the wing for the most stable ride. It's easy to think of flying as just getting from A to B, but in truth, it's a multi-hour experience, sometimes longer than a workday, in a pressurized tube at 35,000 feet. The little decisions, like whether you sit in row 7 or row 27, add up to big differences in how you feel when you land. Are you refreshed, exhausted, frustrated, satisfied? It's all shaped by that seat you picked, or didn't. So, the next time you're walking down the aisle of a plane, counting seat numbers and dodging elbows, take a moment to look around, not just at where you're sitting, but at how your entire experience is being shaped by it. Row 7 or row 27. It's more than a number. It's the difference between calm and chaos, convenience and compromise, control and surrender. Because in aviation, every decision has consequences, even the ones made in seat selection. If you found this breakdown helpful, give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments, where do you usually sit and why? I read every response. And if you're curious about why certain airlines are removing windows or how airplane food actually gets made at 4 a.m., then comment for next on these topics. You're going to see flying in a whole new light. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next seat or the next story.